You are already slowing down, even as you read these words or hear them drifting toward you. Something in your body has already begun to release. Your shoulders, perhaps, the soft space behind your eyes, the long muscles along your spine that have been holding you upright all day, faithful and tired, and only now beginning to remember that they don't have to. Let them go. Let all of it go. Just a little. Just enough. Tonight, you are going somewhere very far away. Somewhere that the ordinary world, its noise, its clocks, its requirements, cannot follow. A place where the air itself is slower, where the light falls at a different angle than you are used to, where something as simple as the sound of a stove ticking in a warm room is enough to fill an entire hour without effort. You don't need to do anything to get there. You only need to breathe and let the words carry you, and trust that your body already knows how to fall, softly, gradually, without any urgency, into the long, quiet dark of sleep. So settle in now. Feel the surface beneath you, the mattress, the pillow, the gentle press of blanket or sheet. Feel the temperature of the air on your face, the one part of you that remains uncovered and open to the room. Take one long breath in through your nose, slow, easy, without forcing it, and let it go without any effort at all. Just let it go. And now, gently, without even trying, let your eyes close. And let me take you somewhere. The world you are entering exists at a great height. You become aware of it slowly, the way you become aware of anything when you are very still, first as a sound, and then as a temperature, and then, in time, as the whole quiet shape of a place assembling itself around you. The sound comes first. It is very low, lower than most sounds you notice in a day. It is more of a feeling than a hearing, a long, slow resonance that rises through the soles of your feet and travels up through your legs and settles somewhere in the center of your chest, warm and steady and without any urgency. This is the voice of the stone, the viaduct itself, ancient and enormous and patient beyond any easy reckoning, humming in the wind that passes around its arches from the north. It has been making this sound for longer than anyone alive can remember. It will go on making it long after tonight is over. For now, it hums beneath you like a held note on an instrument too large to see, and it is, somehow, the most reassuring sound you have ever felt. Then comes the cold, not harsh, not biting, but clean and absolute in the way that only high-altitude cold can be. It arrives at your face first, then at the backs of your hands, then at the tips of your ears, and you feel it the way you feel the edge of a pool of still water before you step in. A clear, precise announcement of where warmth ends and something else begins. The air here carries iron in it, the smell of cold iron, of stone that has been frozen and thawed so many times, it has become a kind of mineral memory of both states. And underneath that, faint but unmistakable, pressed wool. The wool smell is old and clean and slightly sweet, like something that has been stored with care for a long season and brought out now for a purpose it was always meant to serve. And then the light. It is blue-white, the light of this place. The particular quality of light that only exists where ice has rearranged the air into something crystalline and still. It comes from no single source you can name. It comes from the snow that lies across the platform, from the frost that is gathered in long, even stripes along the iron railing, from the deep, pale glow that rises from somewhere below, somewhere below the viaduct itself, below the level of where you stand, where the clouds are. Yes, the clouds are below you. This is the thing you notice, and then must simply accept gently, without requiring it to make sense. The valley beneath the viaduct is full of them. Slow, pale formations, drifting southward in long, silent columns, lit from some far source by a thin winter light that has traveled a very long way to reach them. They do not hurry. Nothing here hurries. They move the way breath moves across a cold window. A gradual, unhurried passage from one place toward another, without any concern for how long it takes. From where you stand, they pass beneath you through the great stone arches of the viaduct in slow procession, and the watching of them is immediately, deeply calming. You are standing on the covered platform of the station. Behind you, the station building is small and made entirely of the same pale stone as the viaduct, fitted without mortar, block against block, each one worn smooth by decades of wind, carrying fine ice crystals from the north. The platform roof extends over you on iron struts, and where the roof meets the night air, long needles of ice have formed along its edge, each one catching the blue-white glow and holding it the way glass holds light, steady and cold and very clear. The freight platform stretches the full length of the covered section, and along it sit crates and bundles and wrapped parcels in orderly rows, each one tagged with a small wooden disc, each tag hanging from a short loop of dark twine. And settled at the far end of the platform, patient and still, exhaling a long, slow breath of steam into the air above its roof, the last train of the day. It has just arrived. You can feel its arrival in the viaduct's hum, which has deepened slightly, and then begun to settle back toward its usual register as the weight of the carriages distributes itself across the stone. The steam rises from the engine in a long, slow exhalation, white against the darker blue of the night sky beyond the platform edge, and then it dissolves softly into the cold and becomes part of the air and is gone. The engine makes a sound after, a sequence of small metallic ticks and sighs as the heat that has been driving it all day begins to release, degree by gradual degree, into the surrounding cold. It is a very satisfying sound, a sound of completion, of rest well earned, of something that has worked hard, settling into a long and deserved stillness. Along the side of the freight cars, the coupling joints creak, a soft, unhurried sound, like the sound of a house cooling in the night. The cars have shifted very slightly as the train came to rest, each one pressing gently against the next. And now they settle and creak and fall quiet again, and the creak of them echoes briefly under the platform roof, and then is absorbed into the stone. The cargo inside them, crated and wrapped and carefully arranged, shifts not at all. Whatever is in those cars has been packed with patience and expertise, and it sits still now the way only very well-packed things can sit, without anxiety, without any sign that it might move. And now, from somewhere near the station's small side door, a lantern light. It moves with the particular rhythm of a person walking who is in no hurry and has nowhere else to be. A low, warm, amber light, entirely different from the blue-white of the snow and the cloud glow, swinging gently from a hand at the end of an arm that you cannot yet fully see. It approaches along the platform, and as it does, the small wooden freight tags in the nearest row of crates turn warm and golden on their upward faces, the dark grain of the wood coming alive briefly as the lantern passes. This is the Rangifer, the keeper of this station, the sorter and tender of its overnight cargo, the one who walks this platform every evening as the last train comes in and the cold settles fully over the high stone bridge. She moves in layers of clothing, a long oiled coat that reaches almost to her ankles, a wool collar pulled up to her jaw, gloves of thick dark leather on her hands, and boots that make no sound at all on the stone platform, as though she has learned over many seasons of this work to place each step with the exact amount of care that makes silence. In one hand, the lantern. In the other, a piece of chalk. It is a good piece, not new, but with enough left in it to last the evening, smooth at one end from the warmth of her palm. She holds it loosely, the way a person holds something they have used so many thousands of times that the hand knows its weight and shape without any particular instruction from the mind. She reaches the first freight car and pauses. She raises the lantern and reads the manifest card fixed to the car's exterior with a wire clip, reads it carefully without hurrying, tracing one line of it with a gloved fingertip. Then she moves along the side of the car, and she does something that takes a moment to understand. She places one hand flat against the wooden planking of the car's side wall, palm spread wide, and she holds it there. She is feeling for the temperature of the cargo inside, not measuring it with any instrument, just feeling it with her hand, with the long familiarity of someone who has done this enough times to know what each kind of cargo feels like through a wooden wall. After a moment, she nods to herself, barely perceptibly, and takes the chalk and makes a mark on the wooden tag hanging from the nearest crate at the car's door. The chalk drags across the wood with a soft, dusty sound, a quiet sound, a patient sound, and leaves a clean white mark that catches the lantern light and seems to glow there in the cold air for a moment before settling into the surface of the tag. She tilts her head very slightly at the mark, assessing it, and then moves on. The viaduct hums beneath everything, low and steady and unhurried, rising through the stone platform, through the soles of her silent boots, through the lengths of the freight cars, a note too low to name, but too present to miss. It is the continuous sound of this place, the sound that underlies all other sounds, the way the deep note of an organ underlies everything a choir might sing above it. You have already grown so used to it that it no longer quite registers as a sound at all. It has become more like a quality of the air itself, a kind of permanent warm pressure in the space below hearing. She moves to the second car. This one she handles differently. She passes her hand along the wall as before, pauses, withdraws it, and then, slowly, without any self-consciousness, she leans forward and presses her ear to the side of the car. She is listening. The cargo in this car is resonance cargo, bottled in thick-walled glass containers, crated in packed sawdust, wrapped in waxed linen to prevent the resonance from leaking into the surrounding wood. She is listening for the sound of it, the faint, pure tone that tells her the containers are intact and the cargo undamaged, that the resonance inside remains compressed and whole and ready for delivery at the far end of the line. Whatever she hears, or perhaps does not hear, the silence itself being the confirmation she needs. She gives another small, calm nod. The chalk finds another wooden tag and makes its soft mark. The drag of it across the grain of the wood is very quiet, a dry, chalk-dusty sound that dissolves into the cold air almost before it has fully formed. You find yourself following her, not intrusively, at a little distance, far enough back that the warmth of the lantern is only a soft suggestion at the edge of your vision, far enough that she doesn't notice and you don't disturb. You are simply following the rhythm of her work, the slow and patient progress of it, the way she moves from car to car like someone tracing a very long, very familiar sentence. Each freight car, a word she has read before, each chalk mark a small affirmation that everything is as it should be. The platform smells of iron cold and pressed wool. It smells of the wood of the freight cars, old and dried by many winters, and of the chalk itself, dusty and mineral and faintly sweet. Underneath all of it, so faint you almost miss it, the smell of steam, the ghost of the engine's earlier exhalation, hanging in the cold air in traces, almost, but not quite, dissolved. The third car is the fog car. Even from a distance, you can feel the difference in the air around it. A slight additional chill, a heightening of the mineral cold iron smell, something at the edge of the senses that registers as depth rather than cold. The crates in this car contain pressed silence alongside the fog. Or perhaps the fog itself is a kind of silence, a solid enough form of the absence of warmth and sound that it can be crated and shipped to the far settlements where the winter is hard and the air too clear, and the residents need the particular comfort of a morning that begins with mist. The Rangifer does not linger here. She makes her assessment, one long pass of the palm against the car's wall, a listening pause of several seconds, a single chalk mark on a single tag, and moves on with the same unhurried steadiness. Beyond the cars, the platform edge is open to the night, and past the iron railing, past the long needles of ice that have gathered there, the clouds continue their slow passage through the valley below. They drift in pale, illuminated columns, one after another, southward and southward and southward, each one taking several long minutes to pass fully through a single arch of the viaduct beneath you. They are beautiful in the way that very patient things are beautiful. Their beauty is inseparable from their slowness, from the complete absence of urgency in their movement. They are not going anywhere in particular. They are simply going, and that is entirely sufficient. The Rangifer pauses at the platform edge between the third and fourth cars and looks at them. She leans her forearms on the iron railing, chalk still in one hand, lantern still in the other, and she watches the clouds for a time. There is nothing in her posture that suggests impatience or boredom, or the checking of any internal clock. She watches the clouds the way you might watch the slow turning of an enormous mechanism that you understand very well and find entirely satisfying. The movement of it confirming some deep expectation, reassuring in its regularity, in the certainty that the next column will follow the previous one, and the one after that will follow in turn. After a while, she turns back to the freight cars and continues. The fourth car, the fifth, each one receiving the press of the palm, the listening pause, the chalk mark, and its soft, dry sound. The wooden tags accumulate marks in the lamplight, each one a small record of care applied, of attention given without hurry. The coupling joints creak occasionally as the cold deepens, a slow, low sound of contraction, metal and wood adjusting themselves to the temperature with a patience that matches everything else here. The viaduct hums on beneath it all, beneath the creaking and the chalk drag, and the distant soft sound of clouds passing through stone arches in the valley below. A note too low to name, a resonance you feel in the center of your chest. The sixth car takes longer. The Rangifer moves along its full length with particular care, her palm returning to the wall 3 times at different points, near the door, at the midpoint, at the far end. And at the far end, she tilts her head, and there is a moment of stillness in which she seems to be receiving some very subtle piece of information that requires her complete attention. The cargo in this car is compressed cold, the densest of the winter cargoes, packed at altitude into containers designed to hold it through multiple transit stages, to be released gradually at the far end of the line in settlements where winter visits only briefly, and where cold itself is a commodity too valuable to let simply pass through and be gone. She makes 2 marks on the tag at this car's door. Not 1, as with the others. 2, the second slightly below, and to the right of the first, each one distinct and deliberate. Then she stands back and regards them, and nods once, more slowly than before. Some additional notation made, some particular detail of this car's cargo acknowledged and recorded in the private language of chalk marks and wooden tags that constitutes her evening's record. She moves on. The platform continues. The train is long, longer than it seemed from the station door, its cars stretching away into the partial dark beyond the reach of the platform roof, out where the blue-white snowlight takes over from the amber lantern glow, and the world becomes monochrome and very still. The Rangifer follows it without hesitation, moving from the covered section to the open platform as easily as if the temperature change were nothing, which perhaps, after many seasons of this work, it has become. Out here, the sound of the viaduct is slightly different. The platform roof, which has been absorbing and returning the hum in a way that made it warmer and more present, is gone, and the sound rises directly through the stone at your feet without any intermediary, more precisely felt than heard, a very low, sustained vibration in the stone itself that travels upward through the body and settles, as always, somewhere around the sternum. The wind is also more present here, not a harsh, barely more than a movement of the cold air past your face, but enough to be felt, and it carries with it more of the iron-cold smell, sharper here than under the roof, and the faintest suggestion of something crystalline, the smell that comes just before snow. Above, the sky is absolute, no moon, or if a moon, it is somewhere behind the ridge that rises to the north and has not yet cleared the horizon. Only stars, and they are extraordinary, bright and numerous, and very still against the darkness. The kind of stars that only exist at altitude on a clear winter night. Too many to count, too bright to ignore, arranged in their ancient, patient patterns, without any regard for what the world below them is doing. You find yourself looking up at them between cars, between the soft chalk marks and the creaking couplings, and the slow swing of the lantern, and the looking of them is the same as the looking at the clouds below, a reminder of how much is happening quietly and without urgency, how much of the world is engaged in long, slow, patient processes that require no help from you at all. The 7th car, the 8th. The Rangifer's breath makes small, pale clouds in the air as she works, small echoes of the larger clouds moving through the valley below, their brief exhalations, and her own matched in quality if not in scale. The lantern swings. The chalk makes its quiet mark. The tag hangs and turns slightly on its twine loop as the wind passes through the open platform, and the chalk mark on it catches the lantern light for a moment before the tag turns away. You find that your own breathing has slowed. Without deciding to, without noticing the moment it happened, your breath has found the rhythm of this place. The long, slow rhythm of the viaduct's hum, and the cloud formations, and the chalk marks, and the patient creak of cooling metal. In and out, in and out. Easy and unhurried, as though your body has remembered something it knew before all the rushing began. Something about how breath is meant to feel when there is nothing requiring it to be anything other than what it is. The 9th car is the last. The Rangifer stands at its far end for a long moment after making her mark, and she looks out past the end of the train into the open darkness beyond. The valley below, filled with slow, pale cloud. The ridge to the north, massive and dark against the stars. The station building somewhere behind her, with its warm amber windows. The mechanical stove inside, ticking quietly in the stillness. She seems, for this moment, to be simply present, fully, wholly, without any portion of herself elsewhere. Just here, just at the end of the last freight car on the last train of the day, on a stone bridge above a valley of clouds, in the cold, blue-white winter dark. Then she turns back, and she begins the long walk back toward the station's warmth. And you follow, and the lantern swings, and the viaduct hums, and the clouds move below in their slow southward procession, and the stars burn cold and quiet overhead, and the whole enormous frozen night settles around you like the most comfortable blanket you have ever worn. The walk back is unhurried and long. The Rangifer moves at the same measured pace as before, not slower because the work is done, not faster because warmth is approaching. Just the same, even, soft-footed, patient pace that she has maintained the whole length of the train and will maintain now back to the station door. She passes the cars in reverse order, the 9th, the 8th, the 7th, and at each one, she glances up at the tag she has already marked, confirming, simply seeing that it is there, that the chalk mark exists, and the tag hangs as it should on its loop of dark twine. It is a second form of the same care she gave on the first pass, not redundant, but deepening. The way reading a good sentence twice gives it a weight the first reading only promised. Between the 5th and 4th cars, she pauses again at the platform railing. The clouds below are slightly different now than they were earlier. The formations have shifted, the columns arranging themselves in a new configuration, as the air in the valley finds some new pattern of movement, and the quality of their pale glow has changed slightly, as whatever far light source illuminates them from below changes its angle. They're still moving southward, still patient and slow and luminous, but they are also, in some quiet way, different. And she looks at them with the same calm attention she has given everything this evening, taking in the difference without judgment, simply noting that the world continues to be itself in all its gradual and unhurried variety. Below the railing, far below, the great stone arches of the viaduct descend into the cloud layer and disappear. You can see them from here, 4, 5, 6 arches visible before the clouds close over them, each one a perfect curve of fitted stone, each one containing within its span a column of slow-moving cloud, and the faint blue-white luminescence of the valley below. The arches are enormous. From up here, you cannot quite believe anything made by hands could be so large and so patient, could simply stand like this above a valley of clouds on a winter night and hum its low hum and give nothing away. But it does. It simply does. And the standing of it, the patient, enormous permanence of it, is as reassuring as anything you have encountered this evening. The walk resumes. The fourth car, the third, the second. And at the second, she pauses again, with her ear pressed to the wall, listening once more to the resonance cargo in its sawdust beds and waxed linen wrappings, confirming again what she confirmed on the first pass, simply because this cargo requires it, because resonance is the most delicate thing a person can be trusted with, and it deserves double attention. She listens for several seconds. Her expression is completely calm. Whatever she hears, or the absence of what would indicate trouble, gives her no reason for concern, and she removes her ear from the wall and chalks a second small mark beneath the first on this car's tag and moves on without ceremony. The first car, the tag with its single clean chalk mark, the lantern light warm on the wood grain, on the dark metal of the coupling joint, on the snow that is gathered in the joins of the platform stone in long, thin, white lines. And then the station door, a heavy wooden door, black with weather and age, fitted with an iron handle worn bright by years of the same gloved grip. The Rangifer takes the handle, opens the door, and the warmth comes out to meet you like something alive. A slow, gentle wall of it, carrying the smell of heated stone and something herbal and dry, and underneath those, the faintest hint of cedar. Cedar, a warm, resinous, low note of cedar, rising from the wooden interior shelving and the old cedar-paneled walls and the small cedar wood box that sits on the counter near the window, with its lid slightly open, releasing its slow scent into the station's closed air. She steps inside. You follow. The station's interior is small and complete in the way that only very carefully kept small spaces can be. Every surface that should be clean is clean. Every object that has a designated place is in it. The shelving along the north wall holds the station's supplies: lengths of twine, a stock of wooden tags, a tin of chalk pieces, a row of logbooks in dark cloth covers with their year dates written on the spines in a careful hand, a glass lamp in a brass holder, a folded cloth for wiping lantern glass, a small hand broom with worn but intact bristles. Each item placed with care, each item exactly where it needs to be. The sight of such careful, patient arrangement is deeply calming in a way that is difficult to explain. It is the sight of a life organized not by urgency, but by habit and preference and long practice. And there's something in it that invites your own interior chaos to lie down and be quiet. The mechanical stove stands at the station's center. It is not large, not much bigger than a steamer trunk, but it is the definite heart of the room, the thing everything else is arranged around, the source of the warmth that has been holding the cold of the high bridge at arm's length all evening. It is made of cast iron, dark with age and use, its surface slightly rough with the texture of old metal that has been very hot and very cold many times over. At its top, a small glass panel shows the ember glow inside, orange amber, steady, unhurried, and it ticks. Not a mechanical defect, a feature. The stove was built to release its heat in measured intervals, each interval marked by a soft tick from the regulating mechanism inside that controls the airflow, and the rate of combustion. Tick. And then a breath of warmth, barely detectable as movement, just a slight softening of the air around the stove, a degree or two of additional warmth spreading outward from its dark iron sides. Tick. And another breath of warmth. Tick. The intervals are even, approximately 12 seconds between each one, regular enough to be reassuring, varied enough by some small mechanical imprecision to never feel mechanical. It is a sound and a rhythm that the room has clearly been organized around, a sound the shelves and the logbooks and the cedar box and the window glass have all, over years of winters, adjusted themselves to. The Rangifer sets the lantern on the table. The table is near the window that faces south, the direction the clouds are traveling below. And through the glass, you can see their slow, pale glow moving in the valley darkness, lit from below, unhurried, luminous. She sets the chalk beside the lantern. She removes her outer coat and hangs it on the iron peg beside the door. She removes her gloves and folds them over the back of the chair. Beneath the coat, she wears several more layers. A heavy wool overshirt the color of old stone, a knitted middle layer visible at the collar and cuffs, something below that, all of it bearing the soft, pressed wool smell that has been part of this whole evening from the beginning. She sits. For a moment, she simply sits in the chair and lets the station's warmth take over. You can see it in her posture, the gradual releasing of the slight tension that cold requires of a body, the shoulders settling, the back of the neck lengthening as it loses the reflexive forward hunch that outdoor cold produces. She breathes out slowly. The stove ticks. The warmth pulses softly from its iron sides. Outside the window, the clouds continue their slow passage below the bridge in their pale, luminous southward drift. She reaches beneath the table and brings up a small cloth bundle, folded over itself and tied with the same dark twine as the freight tags. She sets it on the table and unties it slowly. Not because the knot is difficult. It isn't. But because there is no reason to do it quickly. And the unhurried untying of a knot is a small pleasure that a hurried person forgets to take. The cloth opens out flat on the table, and inside it, dried Lichen-Bread, 2 pieces, dark, dense, irregularly shaped, with a soft matte surface that catches the lantern light and makes it look almost warm, and a small covered pot, the ceramic kind that holds heat for a long time. She removes the pot's lid and sets it aside. The steam rises from inside it in a slow curl, thin and pale, almost invisible. Nothing like the great exhalation of the engine on the platform, but related to it somehow. A family resemblance in the way steam always looks like breath, and breath always looks a little like steam. The smell that comes with it is herbal and pale root tea, something with a slight earthiness and a distant sweetness, something that smells of long altitude winters and the patience of someone who prepared this pot some hours ago, knowing it would still be warm enough to drink by now. She wraps both hands around the ceramic pot, not the handle, the sides, both palms full against the warm curve of it, fingers meeting at the back. The ceramic holds the warmth of the tea with a particular steadiness, releasing it gradually into the palms in a way that moves from the hands up through the wrists and into the forearms. A slow, radiating warmth, gentler than the stove, more personal. She holds the pot like this for a long moment before lifting it to drink, simply taking in the warmth of it through her palms, returning heat to hands that have been working in the cold for the better part of an hour. The stove ticks. The lantern on the table burns its steady amber. Outside, the cloud formations drift below the window in their slow, luminous southward passage, and the viaduct hums beneath everything, through the station floor, through the table legs, through the chair, through everything that rests on the stone of the bridge. A note too low to name, a feeling more than a sound. She lifts the pot and drinks. The Lichen-Bread is next, a small piece, broken carefully from the larger one. She chews slowly. There's no conversation, no book propped against the lantern, no other distraction. She simply eats and drinks in the warmth and the tick of the stove and the amber lantern light, looking sometimes at the logbook on the shelf, sometimes at the chalk on the table, sometimes out the window at the clouds moving through the valley below. It is a meal taken with complete attention and complete contentment, a meal that asks for nothing more than itself. You notice the window, not just the clouds beyond it, the window itself. It is the station's one extravagance. 4 panes of good, thick glass, set in iron frames, slightly uneven in their flatness, in the way that old glass is always slightly uneven, so that looking through them at the cloud valley gives the distant formations a faint, very gentle distortion, as though they are being seen through still water or through the surface of a dream. The iron frame around the panes is cold, and where the cold frame meets the warmer air of the station interior, frost is forming. It forms slowly, very slowly. You can watch it happen if you focus on a corner of the pane nearest the lantern. Watch the crystals build, one branching arm at a time, each arm splitting into 2 smaller arms, each of those splitting again, the whole structure growing in perfect symmetrical fans from the corner inward, from the frame edge toward the center of the glass. It is so slow, you might almost think it isn't happening at all. But if you watch one arm of frost for long enough, just long enough, you will see it extend, barely perceptibly, a fraction of a millimeter, and then hold, and then extend again, building and building in perfect mathematical quiet, the most patient architecture in the world. The Rangifer glances at it too. She takes another slow sip of tea, both palms around the ceramic curve of the pot, and she looks at the frost in the window corner, and her expression is entirely peaceful. She has watched this window make frost many hundreds of times, over many winters, and it has never once lost whatever it is about the making of frost that is worth watching. Tick, says the stove. A breath of warmth spreads outward from the iron sides. The frost in the window corner extends one more branching arm, barely a millimeter, and holds. In time, she takes up the logbook from the shelf, not the one currently in use, that one she will write in before she sleeps. This is an older one, its spine showing the date number of a winter 4 or 5 years past. She opens it somewhere near the middle and reads, not quickly. Her eyes move along the lines at the pace of someone not extracting information, but revisiting a familiar place, reading the way you return to a room you know well, not to find anything new, but for the comfort of its sameness. The handwriting in the logbook is her own, from years ago. The entries are brief and factual. Dates, cargo weights, chalk mark codes, temperature readings, cloud formation observations, stove maintenance notes. Read all together in the warmth of a winter evening. They're a kind of poem, a record of many evenings much like this one, of the same high bridge and the same slow clouds and the same freight cars making their same slow creaking settling sounds, of warmth and cold and tea and the tick of the stove and the hum of the stone. She reads for a while. She finishes the tea, the last of it, the slightly cooler dregs at the bottom of the pot that have a deeper, earthier flavor than the lighter top of the pour. She sets the pot aside and folds the cloth that held the Lichen-Bread and ties it again with its dark twine loop, replacing it beneath the table. Everything returned to its place. Everything as it should be. The stove ticks. She rises from the table after a while and goes to the stove. On its side, near the base, there's a small winding key, part of the regulating mechanism, the thing that maintains the even tick and the measured release of warmth. She takes hold of it, a familiar grip, the key worn smooth where her fingers have turned it so many hundreds of times. And she winds it, slowly, turning it 4 times, 5 times, 6, each turn accompanied by a soft ratcheting sound from inside the stove that is lower and more resonant than a regular tick, a sound like the very gentle clearing of a small throat. She winds until the mechanism is fully set for the night. Enough tension stored in its spring to keep the stove ticking its measured warmth through the dark hours until morning, releasing heat in those steady 12-second intervals without any further attention from her. She stands for a moment with her hand still on the winding key, not moving, not doing anything, just standing in the warmth, just being next to the stove and the amber lantern light, the logbook on the table, the teapot cooling, the frost crystals building in the window corners in their patient branching fans, the clouds moving below in the valley in their slow, luminous southward columns, the viaduct humming through the stone floor, the whole quiet world of the station arrayed around her, everything in its place, everything as it should be, the night fully underway and the work fully done, and nothing remaining but the long, unhurried hours before morning. Tick. A breath of warmth. She removes her hand from the key and goes to the window. She stands at the window for a long time, looking down at the clouds. From this angle, from inside the lit station, through the slightly uneven glass with its frost-edged corners, the clouds below have a particular beauty that they don't have from the open platform. The glass gives them a slight softness, a slight depth, as though they are being seen from the inside of something rather than from outside, and the amber lantern light reflected back from the glass overlays them with a warmth they don't actually have, tinting the pale blue-white of their glow towards something more golden. They move through this layered light in their slow southward passage, column after column, each one taking its several minutes to cross through a single arch and continue on, and the watching of them through the warm glass from inside the warm station is perhaps the most restful thing available to a person anywhere on this high stone bridge in the deep of a winter night. The frost in the window corner nearest her has grown considerably in the time since you first noticed it. It has spread from the corner inward by nearly 3 centimeters now, a branching, symmetrical fan of ice crystals, each arm dividing into smaller arms, each of those into smaller ones still, the whole structure becoming more complex and more perfect the more closely you look at it. In the amber lantern light, the crystals catch and scatter the light in tiny, brief flashes as the lantern flame moves very slightly in some small current of air. Flash and hold, flash and hold. Each tiny point of light appearing and disappearing in the frost crystal structure as the flame moves, the whole pattern of the frost made briefly luminous and then returned to its quiet opacity, over and over, in no particular rhythm, in the way that beautiful things repeat themselves without pattern and without plan. Tick. She turns from the window and takes up the current logbook from the shelf. She brings it to the table and opens it to the current date and takes a pencil from the shelf and sits. The writing takes some time. She records the train's arrival, the cargo inventory, the chalk marks from her evening rounds, the temperature she felt through the walls of the 6th car, and the 2 marks she made on its tag, the appearance of the cloud formations at 3 different times during the evening, the stove's wound state, the tea. She writes slowly and with care, each entry made in the same neat, brief hand that fills the older logbooks on the shelf above. The scratch of the pencil on the logbook's paper is a small, dry sound in the quiet station, not unlike the sound of the chalk on the wooden freight tags, but finer, more precise. While she writes, the station performs its nighttime inventory of small sounds. The stove ticks. The logbook pencil scratches its careful record. The frost crystals in the window corners extend their branching arms by fractions from somewhere outside, very faint, so faint it is almost below the threshold of hearing. The coupling joints of the settled freight cars creak in the deepening cold, one slow sound every several minutes, metal and wood making their long adjustments. And beneath everything, as always, the viaduct's hum, the long, low, continuous note of stone and wind, felt more than heard, settled now into something so familiar it has become part of the silence, rather than an interruption of it. She finishes the logbook entry. She reads it back once, checking it with the same calm attention she has given to everything tonight. Then she closes the logbook and returns it to its place on the shelf and sets the pencil beside it. She stands at the shelf for a moment, looking at the row of logbooks, the current one and the years of previous ones beside it, their cloth spines carrying their dates in the same careful hand, each one a winter's worth of evenings, much like this one. Many evenings, many teas, many slow passages of cloud below the window, and many frost crystal fans in the window corners, and many chalk marks on many wooden tags, and many winds of the stove's regulating key. A long and particular life, a life shaped entirely by patience, by the steady return of winter and the steady work it brings, by the company of clouds and cold, and the low hum of stone, and the warmth of a ceramic pot held in both palms. She puts out the lantern. Not all at once. She turns the wick down slowly, and the amber light in the station diminishes gradually, step by step, the room's shadows deepening as the flame falls, the warm colors of the wood and the cloth and the cedar box and the logbook spines all fading gently into the cooler registers of the night. The last of the lantern light goes, and for a moment the station is fully in the dark, and then, slowly, your eyes find the new light, the only remaining light, the blue-white glow from the window, the cloud light from the valley below, soft and pale and very steady, coming through the window with its frost-edged corners and its slightly uneven glass, and illuminating the station in a cool, underwater version of the amber warmth that was there a moment ago. The logbooks on their shelf, the cedar box, the table and the chair, the mechanical stove with its faint orange ember glow at the glass panel and its steady 12-second tick. All of it visible in the blue-white cloud light. All of it still and quiet, and exactly as it should be. You realize you have been standing for a long time. Or perhaps you have been sitting. It is difficult now to say. The distinction seems less important than it did. The warmth of the station has been working on you all this time, while you watched the frost build, and the Rangifer write her logbook, and the lantern go slowly dark. The warmth, and the tick of the stove, and the hum of the stone, and the slow drift of clouds below the window. All of it has been working on you, quietly and without announcement, the way warmth always works, gradually, from the outside in, softening first the surfaces, and then, in time, everything beneath. The Rangifer has gone to her sleeping place at the station's back, a small room you haven't seen, but whose existence you have always known about in the easy way you know about things here, without needing to be told. A narrow bed, no doubt, a wool blanket, heavy and warm, a small window, perhaps, that also looks out over the cloud valley. She will sleep well. She will sleep the sleep of someone who has done their work carefully and put everything in its proper place and wound the stove for the night, who has nothing undone and nothing to worry about and nothing required of her until morning. The stove ticks. Its warmth pulses softly outward. The clouds below drift southward. The viaduct hums. You are still here, in the station's quiet room, in the blue-white cloud light, and you have been here long enough now that the place has become entirely familiar. The way a place becomes familiar when you have given it enough slow, unhurried attention for it to settle into you, or for you to settle into it. The smell of iron cold is still in the air, but warmer now, mingled with the cedar and the herbal ghost of the pale root tea, and the mineral dustiness of the chalk. The stove ticks. Outside, the freight cars are settling. Their couplings creak once, very quietly, and then fall still. The cargo inside them, the pressed silence, and the bottled resonance, and the crated fog, and the compressed cold, sits in its packed beds of sawdust and waxed linen, completely still, completely held, waiting with the perfect patience of things that have no capacity for impatience, and therefore simply wait without effort. The blue-white snow light lies across the tops of the cars in long, even stripes. The chalk marks on the wooden tags are faintly visible in the dimness, each one a dry white line, each one a small record of care, hanging from its loop of dark twine in the cold, still air of the platform. The viaduct hums. The clouds below are changing formation again, the long columns spreading and thinning and rejoining in new arrangements as the valley air shifts slightly in its nighttime patterns. From where you are, through the blue-white window glass with its frost-edged corners, you can see them spreading and thinning and reforming without hurry, their pale luminescence constant, even as their shapes change. They are very beautiful. They are always very beautiful. They have been making these patterns through these arches for longer than the station has stood above them, and they will go on making them long after everything else here has changed. And there is something in that continuity, the slow, patient, entirely unhurried continuity of clouds and cold, and the low hum of stone and wind. That is the most restful thing in all the world. The frost crystals at the window corners have grown while you have been watching. They are quite large now, complex and perfect and branching in their symmetrical fans. And in the blue-white cloud light, they have a slight luminescence of their own, as though they have absorbed the light from outside and are now releasing it very slowly back into the room. The arms of the crystals divide and divide and divide again, each division smaller and more intricate than the last, the whole structure becoming more detailed at its edges while remaining clean and clear at its center. You could look at them for a very long time. You could look at them for a very long time. The stove ticks, a breath of warmth. Tick, a breath of warmth. The viaduct hums its low note beneath everything, through the floor and the chair and the table and the soles of your feet, through the station walls and the iron window frames and the glass with its frost crystal corners, through the sleeping cars outside and the stone arches below, and the slow, pale clouds passing through them in the valley of the night. One long, low, warm note, too low to name. The smell of cedar is very faint now, barely there, more of a memory of the smell than the smell itself. But it is there. It has been there the whole evening. The smell of iron cold and pressed wool and chalk and cedar and pale root tea and the mineral dust of old stone. The smell of this particular place, at this particular height, at this particular hour of a winter night. Familiar now. Entirely familiar. The clouds below, in their slow southward passage, luminous and patient and unhurried, column after column, each one taking its several long minutes to cross through the arch of the stone bridge and continue on its way. Continue on, southward and southward. The stove, tick, tick, the breath of warmth. The frost crystals in the window corners extending their perfect arms, fractions of a millimeter at a time, in the blue-white light. The creak of the freight cars, very far away now, very faint. The smell of cedar, the warmth, the stone, the hum. You are still here, or perhaps you are not quite here anymore. Perhaps you are somewhere between here and the long dark of sleep, suspended in that very warm and very quiet place that exists at the edge of the two. A place where the stove still ticks, but distantly, where the clouds are still visible below, but as something felt more than seen, where the viaduct's hum has become indistinguishable from your own slow breath. It is all right to go. There is nothing here that requires your attention. The stove is wound. The logbook is closed. The chalk marks are made. The cargo is settled in its beds. The Rangifer is sleeping. The clouds will continue without you. The frost will build without you. The viaduct will hum its long, low note through the stone and the cold and the quiet winter night, with or without you, for as long as stone and wind agree to exist. You can let go now. Let go of the station and the window and the blue-white light and the smell of cedar and iron cold. Let go of the lantern and the chalk and the wooden tags on their loops of dark twine. Let go of the clouds and the arches and the slow, luminous formations moving through the valley in the dark. Let it all become very soft. Let it all become very soft. The tick of the stove, once, and a breath of warmth, once more, and the hum, low and warm and present and patient, the hum of stone, the hum of the long winter night, the hum of everything that is too deep to name and too steady to lose. The clouds, moving, below, Southward, southward, slowly, slowly, cedar, warmth, stone, the frost, building, imperfect, perfect, silence, the hum,